tell the story of God and man, of Mary and Joseph and Bethlehem. Rhythms on a donkey ride, a journey for the mother and the child inside. Hallelujah.
Anyway, good morning, Virginia.
Good morning, Paul.
It's a nice day, a little bit cooler on the Sunshine Coast than we've had for the last few days.
May has been good to us.
Yeah. I want to talk about something that's very dear to my heart today, and which I hope other people will find interesting as well, which is how to find and keep friends.
Yes. Well, tell us about that. How have you found and kept friends? In
Well,
your
I
17
think
years?
you have found and kept friends too, so I want to hear from you equally. I'm not a motherload of information on this, but I've been thinking about it and studying it for a very long time and practicing it. And even in my business career, I practiced it pretty much throughout. And let me just start off by saying that probably the most important social research project ever at Harvard was called the Grant Study. And this study went on for like 70 years. They took a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds and studied them all throughout their life, and it's world famous.
Yeah.
And the biggest conclusion of that study was that finding and keeping friends is the most important dimension of your life. In several ways. The people who were good at that were surprisingly also financially better off. They succeeded in their jobs. But even if they didn't succeed in their jobs, they would be happy at the end of their life. And the people who had just made money but didn't make and keep friends would be unhappy. And that's what I've personally found. I've known very wealthy people who've been miserable. And I've known very poor people who have been very happy. So if you made me pick, I'd pick in a heartbeat.
Absolutely. And I mean, it just that thought, I don't think anybody would necessarily be like, oh, well, I choose money. But I think sometimes our actions can say otherwise, right? Like
Yeah.
what we do on a day-to-day basis. Like, even I was actually thinking about this the other day, that when we get so busy with our lives and we choose our, keeping up with our schedules or whatever, I think that's it. In a way, I think that's kind of one way of not making friends, more of a priority. And I mean, it's a juggle, right? Because, we all have our things, and you can't just like drop commitments. But I don't know, something that I try to really practice is to value the role of friends in my life over my work or whatever. Is that, like, if there's an opportunity to go meet up with a friend, or take my kids over to somebody's house for a play date or something, like I try to make it happen, and that might mean, like, I had planned to work on something on the computer, but instead I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go do this, and I'll do my work on the computer later. And I do get, I think I do get the stuff done. It probably gets done not as efficiently all the time, but I think, like you said, I'm happier for it, and
Yeah.
and
Well,
I feel like I'm cultivating my friendships, which is
if you don't mind a compliment, I'd say you're damn good at it.
oh, thank you.
Well, truly, I don't say that lightly, because not many people are. But let me just give you an example. When I started out a new bank office in Vancouver in 1978, I was trying to decide what I should do to make the place a better place. And I could have decided, well, I want to grow my revenue or grow my profits or be best known or whatever. And I started off, and Kathy can tell you that I decided I wanted it to be the best possible place for people to work, so that the people who work there would love working there.
Right.
And strangely, and that's valuing people over money.
Yeah.
And strangely, it became the most successful banking office of a foreign bank in Vancouver by every measure. It became the most profitable, the largest, and when I left as being manager, half of the staff broke down in tears and said, this was the best job they'd ever had working with me.
That's remarkable. So what did that look like? Like if you take like a place that doesn't value, valuing their customer, or not their customers, their employees, versus like what you're describing. What are some actual things that you did? Like was it like paying them more? Was it making sure they had longer breaks, or like what type of?
Yeah, it's all of those. Although obviously, when you're running an economic enterprise like you, trying to run a house with 3 little kids and a husband and a gazillion things that are pulling on you, you don't have freedom. But one of the things I started early on, every employee in the office, I would take them out for lunch on their birthday,
Oh,
just
wow.
just as a start.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
and they knew and they could expect that. But that was only the tip of the iceberg. I solved a squabble in the office because every office has a hierarchy, and usually the new person on the hierarchy has got to do the worst jobs.
Yeah.
And one of the worst jobs in the office was to clean up the kitchen, and a few of the people were squabbling over that. So I went into the kitchen for several days and just washed up all the dishes. And after I had done that, they were ashamed to come to me and tell me that it was beneath them
Yeah.
to wash dishes.
Yeah, no doubt. That would solve it. That would solve it, because
Yeah.
you
But
kind
anyway,
of you break down that whole like,
Yeah.
it's the low man
Yeah,
on the totem
yeah,
pole's
yeah.
job to deal with that. It's like,
Yeah.
no, the one at the top does it too. So
yeah.
we all pull
Well,
together.
I mean, the other thing is, throughout my life, I've tried to deal with everybody on a basis of equality. That doesn't mean there aren't ranks in an organization, but when I would go to visit customers, I would be as kind and nice and attentive to the secretaries and the person pushing the broom as I was to the CEO or anyone else. And that's just something I've done my whole life. Well, not my whole life, but as I grew older, I did it more and more.
Yeah, it's a practice, right?
Yeah. So extrapolating that into other parts of life, I'm not going to do a how-to, but basically, if you want to find and keep friends, it has to be very high in your intentions. As you said, you have to let other things go in order to look after them. And the second thing I would say is, if we don't keep finding new friends and looking after the old ones, they keep disappearing, because as life goes on, friends move away, you move away, things change. You're working in a new office. People who are not getting new friends constantly are losing friends constantly. So you have to choose which one it's going to be. And a lot of people don't realize until they start getting older that all their friends are disappearing, and now they don't know how to find any.
Well, friends is, I think there can be a bit of a mindset of like friends is something that, friendship is something that happens to you, like this person just, found their way into my life and we just connected, and so we're friends. But what you're saying is that like, and I know my mother-in-law even talks about this, is that like if you really want to have a certain person as a friend, like you have to really pursue that, like
Yeah.
and cultivate it and be intentional, like as
Yeah.
you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody's got things going on.
And the other thing is that you have to be worthy of friendship. And that's a whole nother aspect which I won't spend much time on. But if you're not honest and transparent and giving, who would you want for your friend?
But that's an easier said than done, because then you're getting into like all these layers of like, well, why wouldn't she be honest? Why wouldn't she be transparent? But I think that's the beauty of developing a solid friendship, is that
Yeah.
you can address those things and be like, oh, it's because I'm scared that you won't accept me for who I am.
Yeah.
Or
Well, I will say this about honesty. I can only be as honest with you as you're willing to hear me. And that's true with everybody. There's some people you can't be honest with because they can't hear anything that you say. And so when I'm saying honest, I'm willing to be honest with you.
yeah,
And if you're willing to be honest with me, then it can work.
yeah,
But even in business, a large part of my business success is I became a legend in my community as somebody who would always tell the truth, even when it was a truth that nobody wanted to hear and which would get me in trouble for a time. But then later people would realize that I told the truth no matter what.
yeah. It's setting setting your bar for like this is how I am, and I'm not gonna deviate from that.
I have to tell you a little story from Jimmy Carter. I'm not going to say 100% truthful. Somebody asked Jimmy Carter in an interview, and some people may have heard this. Were you always truthful when you were president? And he said, well, he said, all except my mother always said there's these little white lies. And they said, well, could you give me an example? And he said, yeah, I'm really happy to see you today, and you're looking great.
I didn't know he had a sense of humor.
He had a beautiful sense of humor. And we do say that to people,
Yeah.
even when you're not glad to see them and they're not looking great.
I know. I've never, I've always felt like not even okay with that manner of greeting. Like I try to, when I greet somebody and if they say like, oh, how are you doing? Like I don't just automatically say, oh, I'm good. Like I try to make my answer reflect,
Yeah, how you
like,
are.
but at the same time, I'm also sensitive to like, oh, I don't want to
Yeah.
say that if that person's gonna be like
Yeah.
totally
If they're
weirded
not,
out.
if they're in despair and
Yeah, I don't
and
want
whatever,
they
you
don't
don't
need
want
to-
to
they
add.
don't need to
You don't
hear
want to
about-
add to that. And so
Yeah.
I'm exempting the little white lies.
So we lost our mic there.
It's a windy day
It's a
here,
windy day.
and we might lose it again. But anyway, we'll be optimistic.
We will.
So we were talking about little white lies.
Yes.
And I that's not really what I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
What I'm concerned about, the essence of you is reliable and trustworthy.
Right.
And that is a completely different thing.
Yeah. So we're talking about the take 3. So we're talking about the essence of a person and whether that's really, if that has integrity, if that has it
Yeah,
reflects
yeah,
an
yeah,
honest and
yeah.
and caring heart.
I have to say, my dear saintly mother, who is probably known as the most saintly person in her community, was capable of little white lies. And I'm not expecting anything else from somebody.
Yeah.
So-
and, well, it's,
So if you ask me how I like your dress, don't always expect you to be truthful.
And I mean, and how freeing is that to know, like you what you ask is, you're gonna get the right information back, and then you
Yeah.
don't feel like, well, I don't understand why so and so, wasn't more excited or whatever, and
yeah.
it just
Yeah,
cycles.
there is politeness. I mean, there's more than just truthfulness. I mean,
Yeah.
if a serial killer came in and said, are your children? I would lie
Yeah,
in a heartbeat
exactly, right.
rather than see him go shoot them all.
I think it, like you said, it comes down to what condition our heart is in and what
Yeah.
and our caring. That's something I'm really on a journey of learning about in my own life. Is it's not about like being able to check off all the I did this right, I did follow that rule, all
Yeah.
that. It's about like what am I doing to show that I'm taking care of the people that I love
Yeah,
around me,
yeah.
and not hurting them. So,
Yeah. Well, I'll give you just one little story. You may have heard me say this, but when I went through a messy divorce early in my 20s or mid-20s, I was very hurt, more than I knew at the time. But I learned two things from that. One is I needed to improve myself. I needed to become a better person. And the other one is I went looking for a person with a heart of gold. And I found one, as you know, my dear wife, Kathy. And if we want to really be good in friendship, we need to develop a heart of gold.
Yes, isn't that like if I would have asked myself that question, 10 years ago, do I have a heart of gold? I wouldn't have felt as confident in saying, that I was at least, striving for that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to reflect back that
Yeah.
far. But just even thinking about other people in my life, if they were to ask themselves that question, it makes you wonder what their response would be. Would they be able to even be aware of the state of their heart?
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, we're going off in a little bit of a tangent, but I'm just saying, we all want good people in our life, and the better the people they are, the better their potential as a friend. I mean, I would say at the same token, I try to make friends with the down and out and people who need friends and who don't deserve them. And I think that's the greatest thing anybody can do in this world, is to offer friendship to people who are unable to reciprocate. But that's a different thing from my topic today. Right now, I just want to focus on how do we find and maintain and keep friends. And one thing I would say about it is that there are so many different kinds of friends. I used to think there was a model for what a friend is, but I now know that every friendship is unique. Like the friendship I have with you, I don't have with anybody else. The friendship I have with my wife is not like the one I have with anyone else. And the friendship I have with each of my 4 children, each one is a different friendship. They're not A B C D.
They're not in their little categories.
Yeah, they are not in their little categories. And but I have noticed something. I don't want to sound sexist, but I think women have a tendency to relate heart to heart more quickly, and men tend to relate to people in what they do. Like I've had so many different projects with other men, and when I'm working with them in that project, we are close as close can be. And then when that project gets to an end, then we fall further apart. And with you, I have a project that we're working on. We have a number of projects together, but I try to bridge this and become less masculine in focusing on the value of the relationship, independent of what we're able to do together. And I know that women also do things together. That's I don't mean to make that as an over excessive
No,
statement.
I get what you're saying, and I think just to go on a quick little rabbit trail with that thought, but I think that is like a lot to do with just this idea of what it means to be masculine in this day and age, because I don't think it was always like this, and I think depending on culture, like where you've grown up, it's still different. And how men are, feel like they're able to express themselves.
Yeah.
So, I think I don't think it's a sexist way. I think it's just it's a cultural, socio,
Whatever.
influenced topic, right? But yeah, that being said, I think it also is so important to be able to model it and to be able to see more examples of that, coming through, because anything that, as we know, anything that we see more of, it's more normalized, and it kind of loses its any fear attached to it, or any sort of fallout anticipated from, if I'm like this, then I'm going to be called like I'm whipped, or I'm not being macho enough, or any number of things that are just so ridiculous, I think.
Well, the other one thing that I would say is that I've been aspiring to is to be friends with people from every age group, whether they're a 3-year-old or a 93-year-old. And I try to be friends with women and with men. I try to be friends with beautiful people and with ugly people. I try to be friends with rich people and with poor people. I try to be friends with people who are wonderfully employed and with people who are totally unemployed. So
there's no exclusionary.
And whether they are from my culture or they're from Asia or they're from Africa, if I can get across, then I try to do that.
Well, and I mean, we were just talking this morning before this shooting this video here that you have these Korean friends, and they didn't even speak English when you first met them, and you've developed this friendship, and now they're like kind of like family in a way.
Well, that sort of goes back to the topic we had of making the world a better place. But friendship is very, very key to making the world a better place. In fact, I think I could say if everybody in the world were close friends, it would be a new world already.
One thought I just had that popped into my mind, because like for our viewers watching this, I mean, everybody's got their circle of friends, but I think there's also this thought that like, I don't have enough of enough time, enough energy to cultivate any more than like the 2 or 3 friends that I have. And I mean, like that, I think that is true to an extent. Like you can't be everywhere and do everything. But I think at the same time, like I think if we don't have this expectation that we have to be everybody's, best friend, or that, like maybe you're just the kind of friend that I play t-ball with, or maybe you're the kind of friend that I walk past on the street when we're walking our dogs, and we have a little exchange there on the side of the road.
I actually think that best friend is a category that can get in the way of friendship.
Oh, yes.
I think we want to be the best friends that we can be with every person that we meet.
Yeah.
And some people, you meet them once on the bus or once on the train, and you have a really nice conversation, and you never see them again. And that doesn't make
But that enriches.
that enriches you so much.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away from what you're
Yeah.
able to give to your
Yeah.
three best
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so that's what I would say. And I don't think making categories or hierarchies, because I have found in my life the best friends have sort of a little bit come and gone. But I do try to have a concept of I like to be friends with people for a lifetime. If to the extent that I can. Now they may move away, and I may never talk to them or hear from them again. But in my heart, I try to be their friends for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. And as someone who grew up with a very different outlook on friendship, and also and also kind of viewed my ability to be even a good friend is quite limited, and and I gotta conserve my energy, because I gotta just focus in on like my two besties or whatever. Like it's when I think about it now, it's a bit distorted, but I mean that was just how I thought, right?
Well, let's be honest. Friendship is costly.
Yeah, yeah.
Having children is costly.
You risk, and
Yeah.
you can risk, feelings being hurt and everything. But I think that leads into a conversation that we can have another day about effectively communicating, and how,
Yeah.
like you say, honesty and transparency are such a big part of that, and losing the fear or intimidation factors that can often come into play with
Yeah.
friendship.
Yeah. Well, and friendships have ebbs and flows.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes we think we've let our friend down, or they have let us down. And they may have, but it may be for reasons that had nothing to do with their friendship with us.
Yeah, not assuming. I remember actually I had maybe to wrap up on this note, but I remember having a dear friend years ago, who I remember thinking that like something, like she hadn't responded to a text message or something, like something very trivial. And I remember, being worried, like, oh no, maybe it was like that thing I said, a couple days ago, like maybe she took it the wrong way. And, and I just started like getting all anxious about, oh, I've upset her and now she doesn't like me. and then like when I saw her, everything was fine. And I told her about how, this mind game that I'd done. And she's like, oh, yeah, no. Like, she's like, if somebody doesn't get back to me right, I just assume they're busy. And I remember, I've never forgotten that like she never assumes that it's because of me, like she was really aware that like people have got their own thing going on, or their lives, they're busy, and not to just assume like it's all on me to make sure this friendship stays afloat. Kind of
Can I
thing.
just say one last thing, and then you can wrap up?
That was all I was going to say.
No, but the last thing is, I do try to talk to people in person rather than on the phone. I do try to talk to them on the phone rather than sending them an email. If the people are really far away, I try to do a video chat.
Yeah.
But the closer you can get to a person, like somebody sends me an email, my habit is to pick up the phone
Yeah.
if I can't meet with them.
Yeah.
And I find that helps a lot.
Yeah, well, because there's just so much, like you were saying that there's so much that even just being physically in the presence of another person, like being able to read body language or energy levels or whatever, and you can't pick that up with text messages or on the phone necessarily even. So
Anyway, I just felt, because in this crazy media age, I should throw that in. But
no, and it's almost a lost art. Like I have friends who get seriously weirded out if somebody phones them. They're like, "Why are you calling? What's wrong?" Like it's a thing. It's a thing.
Oh yeah, no. Anyway, we fully agree. Anyway, we have plenty more to say, but
that's all we wanted to keep it the focus narrowed on how to maintain and develop friendships. So,
right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
It's been really nice.
Really nice. Always takes a little bit more
This is
for
the
a
part
woman
that
to
you
get
want
ready.
to save for the intro. You always always do that.
it's like it's a routine. It's part of
Yeah,
it.
from my truthfulness.
Yeah,
That's
right.
not really what.
Oh, our mic just went.
I'm gonna take a break.
Yeah.
You don't have to spill your guts.
Well, it's hanging anyway.
Maybe you should just let it hang.
Yeah, maybe if I let it.